access the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, fellow Owens, this is Myron Rumsey, and you're listening to the podcast of OA, episode number 232. And joining me is my friend on the other end, Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, we're in October. Those that are watching on YouTube can see I'm decked out in some Halloween garb. It's my favorite month of the year. So how are things going for you?
Oh, it's great. Loving it, man. Building the Clark's fire truck for his Halloween costume. I got to send you pictures
cool.
of that. Dude, so last year he did it. I did it. You know, he's got those big radio flyer off-road wagon. You know, it's got these red racks on the side and the front and back.
Perfect.
And so what I did last year was he wanted to be a train conductor, so I molded a big cardboard train out of it and just pulled it around the neighborhood. And this year he wanted to be a fireman, and he got the outfit, and I made him a oxygen tank for it and everything. And now I'm constructing his wagon into a big fire truck. It looks awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I spent almost all of last weekend building 32 feet of wrought iron fence out of PVC pipe and wood, and spray painted it black to look like wrought iron, and then sprayed some rust colored paint on it. And I used some little garden edging for the tops of the fence, and I've got the cemetery all built. Lighting is up. 13-foot Jack Skellington is out there. The 12-foot skeleton's going this weekend, and some other stuff. And then the rest is going to have to wait until the day before because it's not outdoor rated. But I'm really looking forward to having some kids this year. I hope I get better turnout than last year. Last year I had 300 kids, which was great. I'm hoping to top that this year.
Yeah, you got to go big. Every year you got to go bigger. That's what I did with the fire truck this year.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't wait till we move into a house. I mean, the thing about decorating here in the city is, where we live is questionable. There's some stuff that happens in this neighborhood, and I don't trust putting all this stuff out. I guarantee it'll get stolen. Cars get stolen around here all the time.
Wow. It's interesting. Since I started doing this, now I'm seeing more people in my neighborhood starting to decorate their yards more, which is neat. Because it's starting to become a thing.
Yeah, and that's pretty. Like, we have neighborhoods here in St. Louis that dedicate like Christmas time. They got this place called Candy Cane Lane in this entire neighborhood, and they all set up their lights. This whole strip. It's beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool if you started a trend.
Yeah, I hope so. It's my favorite holiday out of the year, and I love creating something like this for the kids and the comments from parents and that kind of stuff. It makes me feel good. But
so, question for your future: when you're getting old and you can't, do that type of stuff anymore, putting up all your displays, just who's going to take over for you?
I don't know. And you said when I'm getting old, I'm already old.
I'm more referring to the time when neither of us can move anymore.
I'm at the point now where I go out and work on it, and then the next day I really pay for it. But I don't know. My son is not really into Halloween. It's funny. I keep saying things. We have a running joke in my house because my son doesn't like scary movies, doesn't like Halloween, and doesn't like comic books. So I keep looking at my wife saying, "Is there something you want to tell me?"
Right. I mean, did you question where the milkman come into play here?
Right. It's been a running gag here for a while, but yeah, no, he has no interest in it. So I'm not sure what I'll do. I may gift it to people that live around me that are getting into it. Although we keep talking about when I retire in a few years, moving to another part of the country. So maybe I'll take it with me and find a home for it when I can't do it anymore. We'll see.
Cool.
We'll see. But this is going to be a big episode. We've got Green Lantern number 4 to talk about, and we have an international listener feedback segment with a lot of listener feedback. So I'm excited for that. And before we even get into that, there was a lot of news. Now, we're recording this on the 12th of October, and there were 3 things that kind of came out within the last 24 hours of us recording that are a big deal. But before we get to that, you, my friend, did a live stream from MissouriCon a little bit ago, and it looked like it went well. It looked like you had a good time.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I had a good time being down there with the No Doubt family. And By the way, I wanted to let you guys know, listeners know, on their website, they're going to start pricing out some signed stuff. So I think
Nice.
the owner of it is going to put up some more autographed. I think he's going to do some art. I'm not really too sure exactly the full information on it, but he did say something about some autographed pieces here.
And that's such an opportunity for Green Lantern fans, because obviously with Martin O'Dell having passed, there's no more opportunity to get anything like that other than what the family
Right.
has that was left behind. So what a great opportunity. And it's amazing to see the family making that available, because it's not a money grab for them. And they want to keep Mr. O'Dell's name alive and in people's memories and stuff. And so they're bringing these things forward so people can enjoy them.
Yeah, and they had a really cool booth, and he's really interactive with the fans and stuff. And I walked around. It's not a big con, and a matter of fact, I don't think they're going to do that particular con next year.
Hmm.
They want to try to do something bigger, and I can't say I blame them, but
No,
I walked
no.
around a little bit, saw a few friends of mine down there, ran into an author from St. Louis, Jim Ousley. He wrote this book called The Atonement Bell. Excellent read. Can't recommend this enough. And it takes place here in St. Louis. You see the arch on there.
Oh, that's cool. Cool.
Yeah. He's a local writer. He actually works in the same line of work we do. Only he works for IT for Express Scripts.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah. So real nice guy, man. I chatted with him for a while. He was up at Apotheosis Comics. He knows Venditti. He chats back and forth with Robert Venditti every once in a while and stuff. So
Nice.
excellent guy, man. Real nice guy to talk to. Yeah.
So you live streamed, which was an experience. It was a first for our channel.
It was fun.
So it's out on the Blog of OA, Podcast of OA YouTube channel. I'll link it in the show notes, but it's out there for those to go out there and enjoy and watch. And you get a little bit of a convention coverage in general, but a lot of time spent sitting down and talking to Spencer O'Dell.
Yeah, and there was some cool. Talking to him was a blast. He's really vocal. And he really likes to tell stories and stuff. And some of his stories are fantastic. He's ran into a lot of the greats. Stan Lee. I bet you 10 to 1 he's probably ran into Keith Giffen. Once or twice in his life.
Good segue. Good segue.
Good segue. But, it was a good time. Give it a watch. It's not very long. Kept it kind of short. Brief, and check it out.
And you just mentioned Keith Giffen, who unfortunately, sadly passed away from, we don't know whether it was directly from a stroke or as a result of things that happened due to the stroke, but he passed away within the last 24 hours or so. His family posted on social media that he had passed in a very comedic way, which I thought was very much in the vein of Keith Giffen. I thought that was kind of funny. Just, anything that I have to go to New York Comic Con, blah, ha, 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 which I thought was perfect Keith Giffen. And for those that don't know the name, I mean, everybody should know the name, because he's done. I was writing the news story today, and I was like, he has touched like every corner of every comics company's multiverse.
Done a lot.
It seems. I mean, he's done so many things, either as a writer or illustrator or both. He created Nort, which is a Green Lantern character. He created Rocket Red. He created Rocket Raccoon for Marvel. He created Lobo, which has been gaining some traction lately with things going on with Jason Momoa possibly and Lobo. But he's done so many things. I was grabbing some book covers to put in a background image of Keith Giffen for the Blog of OA post about his passing. And I had a hard time narrowing it down to the number of covers, but I mean, he worked on volume 2 of Green Lantern. He worked on Green Lantern Corps Quarterly. He did the Larfleeze series. He did Threshold, which led up to that. He did some work on Omega Men, obviously Justice League International, and the work he did with Guy Gardner and the whole One Punch thing. And he touched a lot of the different parts of the DC universe, that's for sure, and left a mark on the Green Lantern side of it. That's definitely a thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, another sad passing. These guys are just getting at that older age,
Yep.
Icons.
Other big news with some massive implications is the formation of Ghost Machine Comics. And actually, it's Ghost Machine Productions, because it isn't just comics. They're jumping into the whole fray, and it's a company with a lot of names that the Green Lantern fans should be familiar with: Jeff Johns, Peter Tomasi, Gary Frank, Jason Fabok, Brian Hitch. I know there's other names. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Francis Manipool, among others. And they are doing their own production company, and Image is going to be producing their books, which if you've followed the Jeff Johns, Geiger, and Junkyard Joe books, they all went through Image, and they are a part of this new line. But what's interesting to note about it is that they are exclusive to Ghost Machine, which means that JSA is obviously impacted because Jeff Johns has been writing JSA. And we're going to talk about Sin Sun tonight, and that's written by Peter Tomasi. So at some point, everything that they've done with their respective stories are done because they're exclusive to Ghost Machine. So where that leaves them and what DC's doing, obviously DC hasn't responded yet. New York Comic Con, I think, doesn't actually start until tomorrow, but this story broke today on the New York Times.
It's interesting that they got that out before the Comic Con too.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Again, they're going to have a booth there, obviously, and so on. And this is going to be, all creator-owned stuff, and good for them. But the implications are broad-ranging. I mean, one of the things they said in the news release is this isn't the entirety. There are more creators that are joining Ghost Machine, but they can't announce them because they're currently under exclusive contracts with other companies. So, will you see the landscape change in that some of these big name creators, I'm thinking like a Scott Snyder or Philip Kennedy Johnson could do the same. Do you see some of them shifting over, using the big two to get themselves started and get their name out there and get a reputation, and then move to something like a Ghost Machine environment where they leave the big two and the big two becomes not what you aspire to, but that's where you start, which is a complete flipping of things.
It really is. But it's the same play they made when McFarlane took off with Image Comics back in the day, man. It's the same tactic. And I guarantee you it all comes down. I'm gonna say this, and somebody can quote me wrong on this. It all comes down to how DC and Marvel are running their studios when it comes to their books.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee a lot of these guys don't like the constraints that they're under.
Yep.
And if you don't have creative flow and you're not allowed to exhibit that creativity that's in you, I mean, you're only going to be stymied by people,
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's work for hire, so you have no ownership in it.
Yeah, I mean, and these guys are going to be contracted with this new company and stuff like that, and they're marketable and with their talent, and that's where I think DC and Marvel's gonna miss out. But of course, knowing DC and Marvel, the big juggernauts that they are, they're a cookie cutter company, right? All they're going to do is get new people in,
Yeah.
And like you said, it's going to come back to the cyclical nature. They'll come in, write for DC and Marvel, maybe contract themselves for however long they do it, and then they can branch out.
Sure, establish a name for yourself, build a reputation, and I mean it's good for them because they're obviously looking out for themselves, and they have to. But one of the things that I read in the article in the New York Times was that Geiger is apparently being developed as a TV product for Paramount. So they're we've talked for a while about Marvel and DC being IP farms. This is a chance for them to develop their own IP farms and get a piece of the pie when it does go forward, and get more than just a thank you at the end of credits of a movie or something.
Well, not only that, think about the marketability of it. So, Geiger just came out, it's recent. So if you're already talking about transitioning and pivoting that into a series, collectively, if you have these group of guys and with the talents in between them, and you start, hey, Paramount's going to start producing this, or, it could be a Netflix series. They could do contracts with any number of streaming services, right?
Right.
You could actually produce a comic book alongside of a television series that's going to be coming out at the same time,
right?
Who wouldn't want to do that? And these are all, and keep in mind too, this is a switch too away from your typical superhero movies, right? And I have a feeling that superhero fatigue is something that is in the atmosphere of fandom, and I think they like stuff that's different. That's why stuff like The Boys become so popular, or runs like that. Those IPs are great and they work really well because they're countermeasure to what superhero films are. And I think people could pivot that way. Geiger was a pretty good book. I read a few of the issues, but I kind of dropped it after that.
I really enjoyed Geiger. I haven't finished Junkyard Joe. I have a little issues, but I fell behind in my reading, so I got to start over from book one again. But both of them were really interesting, and that's one of 4 shared universes that make up the Ghost Machine lineup. So there's this Unnamed, which features those characters we talked about. There's Rook Exodus that Jason Fabok is doing. And then there's Family Odysseys, which is a Francis Manapul, Peter Tomasi collaboration, which features a family called the Rockefellers, which I think is such a great play on
That's
things.
cool.
And they're basically a family that's displaced in time. And what I saw in their video today, they talked about it being, if you've got a witness relocation program, what better way to relocate them than relocate them throughout history? Which
That's
is
really cool.
Kind of neat.
That's an interesting play on that.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last one is a horror universe, which is being done by a creator they couldn't announce, but that they're like really jazzed about having. So who knows? Could you see some of these big names like a Scott Snyder and a Robert Venditti, Tom King? Could you see them leaving the big companies and going that way? I don't know. It's interesting in a way because it opens up opportunity, but at the same time, you wonder what kind of quality you're going to get going forward if we have this rotating doors kind of thing going on.
Yeah, that's true.
But it will be interesting to see how it all unfolds. I'm happy for Peter Tomasi and Jeff Johns to get away from that corporate mentality. I mean, I don't know if you saw the story that was floating about, but apparently there's rumor that Universal might be buying Warner Brothers. So this is how many iterations, and
God.
then what happens, right?
Stick a fork in it, man. I swear to God, that place is such a oh my gosh, I want to say so many curse words right now, but I'm gonna keep it cool. I'm just sick of Warner Brothers, man. They need to go away. They just need to hate their whole brand needs to disappear off the planet.
Yeah, so
I don't get it anymore.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of the DC side, I don't know if you saw the story recently, but James Gunn basically mentioned that any of the actors that were playing the Justice League characters are not going to be playing those characters going forward. But the strong rumor is that Jason Momoa might be doing Lobo, which I always felt like Jason Momoa was born to play Lobo.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think he's going to be great at that characterization. I'll miss him as Aquaman though, which basically means that Aquaman 2 will be I would venture to guess it's probably going to be the last live action Aquaman we will ever see.
Quite possibly.
I seriously don't think we'll ever see the likes of Aquaman again in a movie.
Yeah.
And that really sucks too, because like Jeff Johns brought him back and made him popular and stuff. And the movie was amazing. I loved every minute of that movie, but man, what a bummer.
The last piece of news that came out today was that DC Comics announced the relaunch of Elseworlds.
Mm-hmm.
And the first book is going to be a dark fantasy book called Green Lantern Dark. And it's a brand new Green Lantern. Obviously, it's an Elseworld, so it isn't tied into our continuity, but it's a dark fantasy, a female Green Lantern. Interesting looking character for the YouTube channel side of things. I'll throw the pictures up of what they released today. It doesn't come out until next year, but looks like it'll be kind of interesting. I don't know. What did you think when you looked at it?
I mean, it's going to come down to what we've said before, like how many lanterns you're just going to throw out there for the sake of having Green Lantern's name tagged to it.
Yeah,
it's a cool concept. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to probably read it just to read it because it's Green Lantern.
Yeah.
So their marketing works, but it's still, I'm going to fall back to like, we got so many Green Lantern characters that you could have thrown in there for the sake of throwing them in there.
Now they mentioned the creative team. I am not familiar with either of these names. Tate Brombo and Werther Deladero.
I've never heard either of those names before when I saw this release today.
It talked about, it said it was a dark fantasy wasteland where monsters overrun a I can't say that. Post-apocalyptic, I still can't say it. A post-apocalyptic Earth. And the battle between good and evil ended long ago. Now darkness prevails as humanity struggles to survive on a corrupted planet. I don't know if that's set in the future, but only one hero remains, the one who wields the green flame that can return the light to a dark world. She's been missing for years, and on an isolated island of New England, the horrors only get worse by the night.
So it takes place on Earth, elsewhere.
Yep.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, it sounds cool. I'll read it. It's gonna be cool. I mean, it's Green Lantern. I have to read it.
It's 6 issues. I'll give it a shot.
I think it would have been cool if they would have put Simon Baz in there. I thought it would have made a headline.
All right. Well, my friends, we've got a lot to talk about. So let's take a quick pause. And when we come back, we'll start talking about Green Lantern #4.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa. The podcast of
All right, welcome back, fellow Owens. So here we go. We're opening up with Green Lantern #4, and this scene at the beginning is reminiscent of what I want Myron and I to do sometime when we meet, just hanging out in a bar, having a cup of coffee, a beer, bourbon, if I may, on myself, and just chilling, talking about old times. But what a great opening.
Who's drawing the sword on the other? It's funny because it's like, of all the potential clashes between Hal and Sinestro, the last I ever thought I would see is in a coffee shop.
I know. Throw it on in a coffee shop. But what's cool? The opening was fantastic, and I love the way it was written by Adams. I mean, you could feel their interaction, and you could feel that tension between them, but it was restrained.
Yeah, yep.
They heard each other out.
Yeah, and Zermanico did a really good job. You can see how he draws. Like Sinestro is he knows he has the upper hand, and Hal is just ready to chomp at the bit. And again, they allude to whatever happened on Korrigar, being they will never go back to being friends again, I guess, after this. But you do see the great restraint being showed, and this is a Sinestro who, we saw him during the Night Terrors thing where he was really desperate and in a bad place to having some of his swagger back. And here you can see him being manipulative, and he has the upper hand. But at the same time, he's desperate to get off Earth, and it looks like the United Planets is after him for whatever happened in Korrigar, my presumption would be. And he just wants off, and he thinks that Hal is his ticket, and Hal's ring is going to get him out of there. And even if the ring did work for him, we know, the readers know, and Hal knows, that the ring isn't going to let Sinestro get off of Earth. But what we find out here is the ring doesn't even work for Sinestro.
Right, at all. Segue into the United Planets thing, right? United Planets. Is there any book that's being written that talks about them as an entity, or is it just some kind of ethereal thing that's out there and we don't know what the heck it is?
There really isn't. DC isn't really doing anything cosmic dimensions. Obviously, we saw in Green Lantern War Journal when Varan shows up that the UP is out there, but there's no ongoing story that involves them. And I'm assuming that's because we have a quarantine in place, but there's no books being set out in space that talk about it at all.
Yeah, okay, so why is Earth quarantined? I mean, we don't even know why Earth's been quarantined. So it's nice. I want to know more about the United Planets. I want to see what this. I want this organization to come out in the light and see what's going on. But anyway,
you get the impression, obviously, the UP is going to be coming for Hal at some point. If they showed up for John in his book, they got to be coming for Hal at some point. And Hal's response about them coming, is perfectly on point for Hal. I would like to see it.
Yeah, I would too. That throwdown would be fun.
So Sinestro tries to use these alien bombs as a threat against Hal to get the ring. And when, of course, that doesn't go exactly his way, that then becomes his cover to get out. And now Hal's got to deal with these 3 bombs, which cue up the Flash, because you've got 3 bombs that are going to go off in very short order. You need somebody to cover that ground quickly, and in comes Barry to partner with Hal. And, the relationship between Barry and Hal is probably my favorite in all of comics, the team up between the two. And I like Ollie with Hal too, but you won't have the same kind of conversation you'd have between Barry and Hal near the end of the issue with Ollie, because there's always that one-upsmanship and there's always those little playful digs. And this is a much more heartfelt conversation. But then the beauty of the way that Adams writes the two of them teaming up is, my problem has always been when you have guest appearances in comics, is that you always end up, writers fall into this trope of okay, I've got to make somebody lesser than what they normally are, so I can elevate the guy who's guest starring in the guy who stars in the book. Like when we see a character show up in a Batman book, because Batman is a street level character who can't compete on the same level, they dumb down the character, they weaken the character to prop up the other. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I love how Adams just he knows what both of them bring to the table. He creates a situation where they both get to shine, and nobody's made to look weaker for it.
And it helps with it because Adams wrote Flash for a while,
Yeah.
And second notion that I'm glad that he used Barry. I know Wally's in the current universe, but it's good that Barry's there. But I second you. I like their dynamic. I think they bounce out even in the animated. They work well together. And in animated movies or the series, they've always been kind of chum, and it's been a cool relationship.
Yeah, and it's neat to see. Barry's got to be the one to find the bombs. Hal's the one to explode them, and you get to see some creativity there. And then for Hal, the challenge is doing all this pushes Hal to his limit in terms of controlling the willpower for the construct that he gives Barry, which looked like initially a shield. When I saw it in the previews, it looked like it was a shield, but it's actually a detector, a sonic detector. Mm-hmm. But you can see the scene where Hal is sweating and he's being pushed to the limit with this ring, which is not as powerful as the old rings were, to maintain that construct and create the giant shark and the giant hands. And I love the scene where he plays pool. Just neat stuff.
It was a really fun book too,
Yeah.
And not only that, it was quick, right? Because you start out with the Sinestro thing, and then all of a sudden it's fast paced, right? You have fast friends, and here we go. And then of course you get to the end and we get to the mystery of our drones.
And in the middle of all that, you get the interactions with Carol. And I liked how it wasn't just a Flash Green Lantern team up. It's a Barry Hal team up when they go back to Ferris Air. Mm-hmm. And Hal asks Barry to use his abilities and his skill with being a forensic scientist and examining and looking for what did Sinestro do when he was there. And he actually, recommends to Carol that they check out the planes because he believes that something was tampered with. But I love Zermanico's art is on point throughout the entire issue, but you see the facial features on them. This is an uncomfortable interaction for all three of these characters. Mm-hmm. And, Barry obviously doesn't know what's going on with Hal and Carol. And so he's kind of caught in this awkward situation of he thinks the two of them are together and they're not.
Right.
I don't want to say it was humorous, but it was amusing to watch. But it was also obviously painful. And when they go and deal with major disaster, and that's when we see the pool shot with the meteors that are coming down and so on. But you see major disaster, and there's little bits of information that are sprinkled in here about alien technology. We had Steel Fury back in the first issue who had the Manhunter armor. And now you've got major disaster with some alien tech, and you've got the alien tech that Sinestro was using. It seems like with Sector 2814 being quarantined, that it's becoming a breeding ground for criminal activity, because when there's no police oversight, then it allows the black market to thrive, and we're seeing it happen. So is there a larger plot unraveling before our eyes about alien technology coming to Earth? Is there a threat of some sort coming that we're not aware of? And we kind of see a little bit more about that at the end, because you mentioned it, you alluded to the drones. We kind of see what happens with the drones. They launch, and we don't know what they're going to do. But that couldn't have been part of Sinestro's original plan, because his plan is just to get off of Earth. So what's the point of this? Is this part of a larger event, or was this the trade-off that, because when we saw Sinestro meet up with the aliens in the last issue, they were already kind of infiltrating Earth. Are they trying to, was their goal to sabotage Ferris Air for some reason? And Sinestro becomes a part of their plan in trade for him getting the technology he needs to try to get the ring from Hal.
That's a good point.
But
it's at the end, these drones, when they fly off, it doesn't even allude to the fact that they could be Sinestro's doing, because
the assumption obviously is that, right? But
for all intents and purposes, the alien tech could also be a deeper plot and could be supplied by the United Planets.
You never know, right? Maybe they don't want to deal with Earth, and so they're trying to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't know whether Sinestro just put in the ability to be remotely controlled. We don't know who's pulling the strings.
Right.
And then the power, there was really a good character piece, a heartfelt piece of characterization between Barry and Hal for those 2 pages previous, the last couple pages before the drones take off, where Hal and Barry are talking about Carol. And for all of Hal's missteps in dealing with Carol since he's come back to Earth, you find out he really does love Carol, and he's questioning whether or not is him getting back with Carol the best thing for her. He's looked past, we've talked about on the show before, that Carol, she's not the same as Lois Lane, and that Lois Lane accepts what's going on with Clark. The Clark can't not be Superman. Carol hasn't quite gotten to the same point in emotional maturity, but at the same time, she herself went off and had all these adventures in Star Sapphire, and that was okay for her. But for Hal being away from Earth, it's such a bad thing.
Sure.
There's the hypocrisy, and Hal's kind of looking past the hypocrisy of Carol's actions. He's looking past the whole thing with Kyle, which we'd like us to all to forget that one.
Right.
But he's questioning whether or not he's really the right person for her, because is she ever going to be content knowing that he's got to live up to this responsibility that he has? And Barry makes such a great point about, Iris is the same way, but she would worry about me anyway, anyhow. So I might as well be doing what I need to do. But she's accepted the fact that Barry, he's been given this ability. He's got to use it for the greater good. And that puts him in danger. And
I think that's the biggest difference between Iris and Carol.
Yeah.
Carol's never accepted it.
No.
Throughout any time whoever's written her and throughout her entire history, it's never been an acceptance thing for her. But whenever I've read The Flash, I've always gotten that from Iris's character, that it's always been about she accepts Barry for who he is, for what he has to do, even when he has to jet right away. There's no guilt. They don't. She doesn't drive into guilt home.
She doesn't blame him for it, right?
Make him feel bad, whatever.
Yeah. Whereas Carol has always blamed Hal for leaving.
Yeah, and always made him feel bad about it.
Right. So
and a lot of times she's also blamed him for the fault of their relationships failing, because of him doing what he does.
Right. It's such a complex relationship. And I like the fact that we're seeing that Hal sees the bigger picture, and Barry gives him some really good sound advice about what to do. Because there are people that have reacted very badly. I shouldn't say badly, reacted very negatively to how Hal has acted in the first few issues.
Mm-hmm.
And here
he calls him out on it here too. He even calls himself out on it here.
Yeah. He's like, there's one of my favorite songs is a song by Etta James called "I'd Rather Go Blind," and it's about seeing the person you love with someone else, and you'd rather be blind. The person would rather be blind than see that.
Mm-hmm.
And Hal's in the same position. It's got to be hard for him to be on Earth and see Carol and not be that person in her life. It's easier if he's off Earth.
And not to mention he's stuck on Earth too, so he ain't got no place to go.
Exactly. And do you know the one thing that was missing out of this entire issue? There was no Kilowog.
Oh yeah, no allusion to it either.
Right. Is that because Hal's real best friend was there and he didn't need to have a construct of a dead best friend to be by his side?
I mean, that's a good stretch. We can go with that one.
Right. I'm going with it. The theory still sticks, right? Because Hal hasn't had the conversation with Kilowog.
No, he hasn't. But he's having a pretty heartfelt conversation with Barry.
Yeah. Hal's always been the kind of character that he doesn't have these conversations easily. He does not let his guard down. Barry's probably one of 2 or 3 people that he can do that with. So it's great to see him have that, because Hal has not had this connection since he came back to Earth with any of his friends.
With nobody, period.
Right. So I think this is a really good thing. And you can kind of start to understand what's going on with him. There's definitely some issues that are going on, and he's struggling. And to figure out, well, where do I fit into it? Not only where do I, but should I fit into any of this? So it doesn't excuse the actions from the first issues, but it kind of makes it easier to understand it.
It adds a little more depth to people complaining about Hal.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a passing of the baton. Maybe Hal will, lack of a better words, mature after this, with this open heart conversation with Barry.
He needs to have the same conversation with Carol.
I mean, that would be helpful if he wants what he wants, and it's always helpful to confront the person you want it with.
Right. Because it's never going to progress or move on or heal until they do.
That would be a whole comic book, I think. I think Jeremy Adams would be busy with that one.
Yeah.
You'd have to write all 30 pages would have to be due to, deconstructing Carol and Hal's relationship.
It's not a 2-page conversation.
Definitely not.
But so the other half of the book, I shouldn't say half, the back end of the book is the new Peter Tomasi Sin Sun backup feature. And I'm not sure, I didn't dislike it.
It didn't get me.
No, it didn't get me either. And I don't know whether this character is really Sinestro's son, or is this just a kid who's in a bad situation, and so he dreams of it, or he's projecting onto Sinestro what he wants himself to be like. He wants to be the strong character who people fear because he has no control over his life and he's living in fear, essentially. I don't know whether he really is or not. At least I think he's convinced that he is, but whether that's true or not is a whole nother story.
It could also have something to do with on Korgar.
It could.
Maybe Sinestro's looking for his son.
So there were a couple things about this that I thought were interesting, and they're not related to the story necessarily, but some callbacks. You know how I love when we reuse old concepts and bring them forward again. So this takes place on the planet Zila in Sector 2541. And Sector 2541 is the sector that Kurt was from. Do you remember Kurt was the Green Lantern who John Stewart snapped his neck?
Yeah.
This is his sector.
Interesting.
And Zila is the planet that when Kurt died, his ring patrolled the sector and went to the planet Zila and went to a character named Lig Inat, which is Gil Kane backwards. And he momentarily was the Green Lantern of that sector. So Zila we've seen before, granted for a panel or two, but it was neat to see Tomasi because he wrote both of those issues and those characters back in the day when he was writing Green Lantern Corps. It's neat to see him call back to something he's done before versus just make up something new.
That is really ingenious for a writer to do something like that. I mean, he might have kept that in his collective memory from when he did write the Lantern books. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a neat touch that he at least tried to tie it back to something, which is cool. But Korg, he's living out a very Oliver Twist-like existence. He's working for Nagaf, which is almost Fagin backwards. And he's not accepted, he's not respected. He's trying to prove himself. And I love the part where he takes the marker and draws war paint that looks like a mustache on his face.
It's like blurry.
Which was kind of neat. There isn't a whole lot happening because, again, a whole lot really can't in this few number of pages. But Peter Tomasi is clearly trying to set Korg up as being the Super Sons version of Sinestro, for lack of a better analogy.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, throw him in with the Super Sons category. He'd fit that mold.
I think I didn't have so much a problem with the script of the art. The art was not my style of art. It's not bad. I'm not criticizing the art. It's just not a style I'm interested in. It's not a style that I really enjoy. So I didn't care for that. And the coloring made it even look more cartoony than the art already did look.
Well, I mean, like, it looks like a kid's show. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it
No.
felt like I was watching a kid show, and that's cool because I mean, it's neat that it's neat that you're going to have this Sinestro's son, and it's like he doesn't seem so as diabolical as Sinestro is. More temper fueled because of his age, I guess, but
Yeah.
who knows? I'm not I'm not an expert in Corrigar physiology, but
Well, and I guess I go back to, I don't know whether he really is Sinestro's son, or is it just he wants to so desperately be feared and respected that he's projecting. Who knows?
who
But
knows,
yeah, in terms of the art, it's not a bad thing. Just it's not my thing. That's all. But it looks like he's going to be in search of getting Sinestro's blood. How he's going to do that from this sector, I don't know, but we'll see where it goes from here. Again, with the whole Ghost Machine announcement, who knows how much of this has been done, because it's probably over with from that side of it. So we'll see where it goes.
I would imagine most of those guys probably have all their stuff written out.
I would imagine so, or at least to a given point.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll probably, I would say after probably a shift, you might see a shift after the New Year's, maybe.
That's what I'm thinking, because
Yeah.
it looks like the Ghost Machine thing was like most of this stuff isn't coming out until April of next year.
So they're probably working on it as we speak, and obviously have been working on it. And then at the same time, once they get out of their contract, I guess their contractual obligations to whoever they're with now. I guess Tomasi's contracted with DC. I'm assuming that's the case.
I'm assuming, I don't know whether he had an exclusive contract with DC or what, but I would presume at this point that everything that they were going to write for DC has been written and turned in, and it's just a matter of the artwork catching up with it and seeing publication.
Makes sense.
Did you look at the Flash preview at the end of this?
I did not. Did you check it out?
I checked it out. It looked interesting. I think Jeremy Adams has a good grasp on the Flash characters, and this was something he wrote. I wasn't really a fan of the artwork, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
But it looked interesting. I guess I have the same. I have reverence for the Golden Age characters, but at the same time, I'm like, how many characters with super speed do you know what I mean?
Flash family, man, you got to have a lot of them.
I don't know.
I like Jay Garrick. I'm a big Jay Garrick fan. I forgot this was even back here. I need to start reading this. Adams is great with the Flash stuff, man. I'm a big fan of his when he wrote the Flash.
I think what I really like about Adams is there's depth of story in here, but a lot of it is, it's been the first time in a while that I could say your kids could read this book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's adventure, it's escapism without a lot of the extra baggage that tends to for a while was put in a lot of comics. There for a while, there was a lot of violence, a little more graphic violence in books that maybe made them less friendly for kids. Whereas I'd have no problem giving this to a kid to read.
Yeah, it was pretty tame.
Yeah. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a criticism at all.
No, I agree. Great issue though. I like I like where Adams is going with this.
Yeah, I do too. I'm very, very happy. We're 4 issues in, 6 if you count the 2 Night Terrors book. And I like where it's going. I think we're going to see even more stuff down the road that is going to make us happy. I think he's just starting to hit his stride now that he's kind of got some of the bridging stuff off of how we got to where we are. He can focus on the here and now and push forward.
Agreed. Looking forward to issue 5.
All right, my friend. Well, my power ring is blinking, and I know we have an awful lot of listener feedback from all over the planet. So let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll start talking about what our listeners have to say.
Hey, I did want to ask you real quick before we do the listener feedback. Did you see that what Dynamite Comics is doing with Warner Brothers Discovery?
No, I did not.
So they're going to start printing. Dynamite Comics is going to They're going to do the Flintstones. They're doing Space Ghost, the Powerpuff Girls, Wizard of Oz, Care Bears, Thundercats,
Huh.
all under the Dynamite Comics imprint. I forgot to tell you that. I should have said that earlier.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
I'm down for some Space Ghost.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. They already got some of the images out for the Thundercats stuff. So check it out. It's on Twitter.
I'll have to check it out. Or X, yeah. Did you see the one of the variant covers for this issue is Hal and Godzilla?
Oh, I didn't know that. That's for number 4?
Yeah, yep. And I believe the Batman and Robin issue has the Kong side of the image on this side. It's a set, essentially. I didn't pick up the Batman and Robin book. But it fits over here because you can see a little bit of Kong on the edge near the staple. And so that you put the two together and you get a bigger image, excuse me.
I can't wait till that starts. That's going to be awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. My wife is already saying Godzilla's going to beat everybody, but
that's fair. I'm a Kong person, but okay.
When we talk about that issue, we got to wear our Team Kong and Team Godzilla shirts.
I'll do it. Well, I'm definitely going to do it.
All right, we'll be right back.
What up, dweebs? This is Guy Gardner. You're listening to the podcast of OA.
Our first message is from Cloned Avenger, who has some comments about Green Lantern number 3. Transmitting message in 3, 2, 1.
Green Lantern number 3 was great. I picked up War Journal as well, just haven't read it yet. I waited on my comic book store to get a copy of Green Lantern number 3, but they had so many delays. Even another comic book store I checked did not have it. I actually ended up getting the comic on a trip I took to Buffalo and visited a comic book store there. The first location I visited was sold out, had to go to their other location to get it. I'm also curious, how are your local comic book shops doing? Unfortunately, mine is possibly going out of business. My local area had this place for a few years, and it was the first one in almost 2 decades, so I'm a little sad it may no longer be in business. The next closest one to me is almost an hour away. I also thought the Aquaman trailer was fantastic. Big fan of Jeff Johns' Aquaman run. Also, I am curious. How are you feeling about James Gunn's DC Cinematic Universe? And is Jeff Johns still involved with the Green Lantern Max series? Thanks for all your videos, guys. Listening to it right now. I've listened to so many of your old podcasts now. All the way from the beginning. I loved hearing your thoughts on the Green Lantern movie when it first came out. As well as your thoughts on the animated series, and the eventual explicit episode of the podcast when the animated series was cancelled. I was just as upset as you when it happened.
Hey, thank you, Cloned Avenger. All right, so let's pick it apart here. We all love what Adams is doing with Green Lantern, and I will further that by saying I love what Johnson's doing with War Journal. Great books. Looking forward to seeing what they're going to be doing with the characters. I am sad to hear about your local comic book shop. I mean, I know I can't speak for Myron's. Mine, Apotheosis, well, we got 2 in the area that I frequent. Comic book headquarters in Apotheosis, and both of them are thriving. As far as I know, they're doing really, really good. I know Martin had a little bit of an issue the other day. I think somebody stole, man, I think $500 worth of graphic novels.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a city, it's St. Louis, and it's, but anyway, as far as I know, he's doing really, really good though. Last I talked to him, I did some work for him up there a few weeks back, and they're doing good. Sorry to hear about yours though. It's never fun when you lose a local comic book store. I don't know how you're doing up in New York.
I've got about 5 stores within an hour of me, which is crazy considering how small my area is.
Sure.
But they all seem to be doing well. I only frequent one because it's 10 minutes away from where I live. And he's been around for over 20 years and he seems to be doing really well. I chat with him often and things seem to be going very well. I'm sorry to hear that Cloned Avengers shop is closing. I saw reading his comment that he took a trip to Buffalo. I'm not sure how far away you are from Buffalo, but Buffalo is about 3 hours away from me. So we're not too far from each other, it sounds like. But yeah, it seems to be going well. I think a lot of it is I think those stores that have a really good grasp on what they know they can push and sell probably do better than those that maybe over purchase. I know like my shop for a while was having a problem where they were overbuying books, but they've kind of tailored it back. In terms of the Green Lantern book, it seems to be selling very well from what he's been telling me. I mean, he's been getting 3 out of the 4 variants every time. So he's not buying 50 issues because he'd be getting that 4th variant. But again, small community. So I think that's good if you're in that range. And he says it's been slow on. He's been getting good word of mouth from fans. But he really cultivates the pull list culture, and he has people that are committed to their pull lists. So I think that helps him sustain himself because he knows what people have committed to buying.
Well, and most often than not, when you got a pull list, I know a lot of these comic book shops, if you do have a pull list, the longer, and this is a bad faux pas, and I've done this before in the past, I've gotten better at it. Don't leave your products sit. You know what I mean? Get your pulls. If from what I understand, if you leave your products sit for longer than 3 weeks, the shop loses money. I don't know I don't know the science behind that. I do know Martin and I talked a little bit about an effective distribution. I know there's been, when you and I have talked about recently in the past with all these different publishers going with these different distribution centers that they do their product through. And because I know a few times I've ordered stuff through him, and he said, I can't guarantee when it's going to come in because it's being sent from this person and stuff like that. And that does have an impact, because at the end of the day, I could sit there and go, well, you know what, fine, I'll just go to order it on eBay. But I'm not a prick like that. I'd rather order it from my local comic book shop and give them money.
I'd rather support my local shop. If my shop can't get it, then I'll look elsewhere. But generally, I try to support them. I've heard similar things with shipments being shorted and things like that. And that's going to be more difficult for them now that they have to go to multiple distribution sources. It probably drives some of their costs up too, because you're paying more shipping. Mm-hmm. My assumption would be. One of the comments that Clone Avenger asked was, what do we think about James Gunn DC Cinematic Universe? And I mean, we don't know a whole lot yet, but I'm kind of optimistic. I don't know if we'll see Johns involved with the Max series. I kind of expect now that
left it.
Yep. I think now that Mad Ghost and Ghost Machine are going, I don't see it happening. Now, it doesn't preclude him from working on other media productions. I mean, it would prevent him from working on comics. So maybe, but I get the impression that Gunn has his own vision, and he's not going to be one who's open to letting other people in that want to have a lot of influence.
At the same time, though, I mean, if you're a content provider like him, and you come in with your own vision, it's not just him coming in with his own vision, mind you. And I think that's what people mistake with what's going on with this whole Gunn thing. It isn't just him coming in and saying, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I think people just take it that way because he's automatically coming in and changing things. He's taking on baggage. And I don't think people understand the level of baggage that dude is taking on. So he can make a step to the right and get criticized for it, make a step to the left and get criticized for it. But at the same time, nobody's giving him a chance to breathe, right? I mean, Zack Snyder came in and created his vision. It gained traction. It did what it did, but it faltered off. I mean, you can't blame Snyder for that. You can only blame the fandom for that, because the fandom is the one that drives these movies to where they need to go. And I think that point often gets overlooked. And when it comes to Gunn, I'll be honest with you, I don't care what the guy does. Let him get in there. Let him do his thing. I mean, it's like the news today with none of these characters coming back and stuff like that. I understand why. Mm-hmm. Let it go. I mean, let the crap go.
I mean, the bad news is we're losing Henry Cavill as Superman, but the good news is we're losing Ezra Miller as the Flash.
I mean, that is the great news. I'll miss Cavill, but it's time. But it's time that we got. I think it's time as the comic book community and fandom pivots, man. It's time to step past that and move on.
Yep,
look in a different direction. Mm-hmm. But that's the point, right? People got to start looking in a direction for the positivity instead of looking for the past for the negativity that it still implies is going on.
Right. And you couldn't continue with those actors, because every time you see them, it's going to call up the failures of the past. And this is a complete new beginning. I kind of wish he hadn't kept the cast of some of the characters that are staying. Amanda Waller is going to be played by the same actress, and we're still going to see the same actor as Peacemaker. I kind of wish he just completely clean slate, but I understand those two actors did such a great job. But Gal Gadot did a great job too.
Not only that, those two characters were, Peacemaker is just tied into the Suicide Squad, but at the same time, those to me are offshoots of what your main DCU is, with your Superman, your Wonder Woman, your Batman stuff. Now it's time to just pivot away from that. Time to move on, let it go, and let's see what happens.
I'm interested to see what he does. I think he will tell some good stories. I always wish that there was a Kevin Feige type character steering it, and maybe James Gunn is going to be that person. I guess I don't trust him enough yet to be like, hey, I can't wait to see what he does, because I'm not sure if I trust him. He hasn't earned my trust. And I need to see more of what the plan is, and we just haven't seen enough yet. So I can't criticize anything, because there really isn't anything to criticize other than what little decision making there's been.
Well, and that's why people criticize him now, because it's all the past crap.
I need to see something. I need to see something material that represents his vision of what he sees the DCU being on film and in TV. And until then, it's kind of hard to go from there. And thanks for going back and listening to all of our old episodes. The episode where the animated series was canceled was not my brightest moment, but I'm glad that you see and you could relate to the passion I had at the time about that show being canceled, because again, that show remains to this day the greatest adaptation of Green Lantern outside of the printed page.
Got it.
But all right, well, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us our next message?
The next message is from JP Roca. JP has some information about Superboy, the Man of Tomorrow, and Superman Lost. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
In Superboy, the Man of Tomorrow, Guy and Kyle arrest the Cosmontiers, genetically created aliens by a rogue dominator. The leader Truff killed a random Green Lantern. Truff is a cybernetically altered Daxamite who possesses the body of a Superboy clone. In Lost, Superman fell through a wormhole and is lost in some far-off galaxy. He finds a Green Lantern named Hope that knows nothing of the Corps. Hope and Superman are trapped on a planet for years until Superman finally decides to move on from the planet. Hope does not want Superman to leave because they have a relationship. So she attacks him, but Superman on a hunch uses yellow to defeat her and take off her ring. Superman was right to believe that her ring was an old model not tied to the main power battery and still had the imperfection to yellow. How she keeps the ring powered is beyond me.
All right, JP Roca. So he's filling in some blanks on us. I think we had some questions about lanterns. I did ask if anybody's reading Lost, and he does respond in here. So somebody else is reading Lost, which, by the way, I recommend. It's pretty good. Superman is lost in the outer reaches of some foreign-owned galaxy trying to find his way home, and he ends up running into a Green Lantern named Hope, who kind of uses an older style ring that has a yellow imperfection to it. So it's an interesting storyline. The Superboy Man of Tomorrow, I don't read it, but JP mentions that Guy and Kyle appear in there, seem to arrest somebody. Not sure what that is.
Yeah, that was that issue we talked about last episode, and you and I hadn't been reading the entire thing, so we didn't have the context as to what happened that led up to that.
Thanks, JP.
So,
context.
I
do like to drop it. I do like to drop at the Daxamite because Sodom Yacht was my guy, man. I miss that guy. But
so yeah, no, I appreciate JP jumping in and providing some of that detail, because I haven't read either one of those, so I didn't have any context, and so that really helps fill in the blanks.
Cool. Thanks, JP, helping us out.
All right. Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us our next message?
We've received a communication from Santiago, who has some comments about the current Green Lantern books and the Kyle Rayner era. Commencing transmission in 3, 2, 1.
Hi Myron and Phil, first of all, thank you for the podcast. I really enjoy it. I'm glad you make time to do it. I heard that Myron is completing Kyle's era. That run got me into Green Lantern, but I loved when Hal came back. I'm also completing Volume 3, it is quite difficult to find those books in Argentina, but I am slowly achieving it. About current GL run, I really like it. It feels Diaris's classic, not too complicated and eager to read more. The John Stewart part, not that much. I'm not sure how I feel about the more Jedi, medieval or mystic approach. I don't know how to describe it. War Journal first issue was something else and feels more Green Lantern. A GL core or short stories about other non-human GLs is too much to ask? Whatever the case, I'm happy that we have 2 cool books a month to read. Greetings and best wishes to you and all the fans.
Hey, Santiago, good to hear from you. Hope things are doing well for you down in Argentina. And I am filling in the Kyle era collection just because I'm a kind of a completionist, and I feel like I need to have all of volume 3 since I have all of volume 2 and all of volume 4 and 5. So it's nice to see somebody else is on the same journey as I am. I have not started reading the books yet because I've got too many books to fill in the blank, and I don't have enough run. I want to kind of read them in their entirety if indeed I do go in and read them. But I agree with you about the current jail run. It does feel very classic. It feels very, I don't want to say Silver Age, but almost like 80s version of Green Lantern, there for a while. And so it'd be interesting to see how it goes. And, War Journal does feel more like a traditional Green Lantern book because of the cosmic nature. I'm enjoying them both a great deal. I mean, we're only one issue in on the War Journal book, but I'm really enjoying it for what it is so far. It's interesting because it shows both books are similar in a way, but they show the contrasting styles you can have with the Green Lantern mythology and still have 2 great books. So, but I agree with you 100%. I mean, we've been saying for a while that why can't we have a Green Lantern Corps quarterly that focuses on the other characters? I'd love to have that. I mean, I'm glad to have 2 books. Don't get me wrong, but I think we could have 3.
I think they could take a letter from me and do a Know Your Core book.
That's right.
You can call it a Know Your Core book.
Right.
Boom, done.
Have it anchored with some of the other lanterns, and why not? Green Lantern Corps Quarterly was a great book.
Really was. I'll always miss that book.
All right, well, Power Ring, there's more to come, so go ahead and fire away.
Our next message is from Andre, who is catching up with the podcast. Transmitting message in 3, 2, 1.
Hello Myron and Phil, it's your friend Andre. It's been a while since my last email, but I'm still listening. I have been listening since 2014 and I admire your dedication to this. I hope this letter won't be too long, but I can't help myself, so I apologize in advance. I stopped caring about new DC stuff after Morrison left Green Lantern, but I'm cautiously optimistic about the 2 new GL books. Though DC still has to go a long way to earn my trust back. It's cool that Myron also noticed that they changed Hal's eye color back to being blue. I know that it's a minor issue, but I stopped caring about the new DC comics because of this kind of stuff. It's like they don't care about the continuity anymore. It baffles me when a Green Lantern dies tragically in one story, but shows up later in the background anyway because the artist didn't know that this character died. And it happened way too many times. Hal has always been my favorite and I always ignored Kyle's era because of what DC did to Hal. But recently I thought that it couldn't be worse than Thorne's run and I decided to give it a chance. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. As it turns out, even though Hal Jordan broke bad, Kyle Rayner still respected him a lot and worked very hard to honor his legacy. And even some of the old characters from the GL Corps showed up. Guy Gardner and John Stewart are still there. It's not a bad read, especially when you know that eventually Hal Jordan and the GL Corps will return. I know that I'm kind of late to the party, but I also wanted to comment on episode 200 of your podcast. I laughed out loud when Myron mentioned me and jokingly said that I'm probably hiding from the government the fact that I listen to your podcast, which is definitely true. I was surprised that you remember me. I've finally caught up with your latest episode after taking a break and I wanted to share with you my top 5 non-GL Green Lantern characters. 5. Tom Kalmaku. He's criminally underused these days. He was Hal's best friend for years. I remember enjoying stories about him and his kids. His character really evolved with time, and I love characters with rich history. 4. Krona. He's one of the most important characters to the Green Lantern lore. He was there at the beginning of it all, and he's just one of the most dangerous foes of the Green Lantern Corps. 3. Carol Ferris. She's an interesting character on her own. I don't know if she's the one for Hal, but I loved her as a Star Sapphire, and she was a great villain. I was very surprised to find out that she's the one who murdered John Stewart's wife Kat Matui. She's much more complex than most people think, and I'd love to see her character explored more. 2. Jim Jordan, Hal's brother. Consistently one of the most interesting background characters. Even back in the Silver Age with its simpler stories he stood out. Jeff Johns and Robert Venditti had also done a great job with him. 1. Saint Walker. I hope that DC will use him more in the future. Definitely one of my favorite DC characters. I even had an action figure of him, but sadly I had to sell it a while ago. He was great in the comics, and was awesome in the animated show.
Hey, Andre, great to hear from you. Long time no hear. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Things are kind of crazy out there right now, so I'm glad to hear that things are okay for you over in Russia. I had to laugh when I read your comment about whether or not you had to hide the fact that you listened to the show from the government. I had these images in my head of the episodes of the podcast being smuggled into the country on USB sticks.
That'd make for a great comic book story. Andre could be the main character. We're smuggling him into him. I love it.
I'm sure you can stream it. I'm assuming. I don't know how things are over there, whether your government has a lockdown on some of the internet content. We hear all kinds of rumors and things, so you never know, but I'm glad you can find us and you can listen to us. And I hope that what we're doing is making your life better and you're enjoying it and it's enhancing your fan experience, because that's what it's all about as far as we're concerned. I like you. I liked the Morrison book probably better than most. But I don't know what the delay is for you getting these new books and the new series, or how you're able to get them. But I think both of them are really good. As we were saying a little while ago, the flavors are a little different, but boy, they're both good. Which it's been a while since we've had that kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed.
And we seem like we're very kindred spirits. You ignored Cal's era. So did I. I gave it a shot, but it just wasn't my thing. But we'll see, and I love your comments, your top 5 list. Mm-hmm. All great characters. And as we said before, there's no bad character you could put on your top 5 list. They're all good. I love the fact that he included Jim Jordan though. That was that was peculiar too. I read that. I was like, oh, go him, man. Yeah.
And he's a really strong character, right? He's always been a supportive role for Hal.
Yeah.
And he's always been a strong part of Hal. So.
And Krona is just such, classic. How many great stories have we had with Krona,
Yeah, no kidding.
But again, I hope all is well over there where you're at. I hope you stay safe and are enjoying things and living your best life. And we hope to hear from you again soon. Take care, buddy. Power Ring, why don't you go ahead? I think we've got one more for our buddy Ken. So fire away.
The last message is from Ken, who is also catching up with the show and has some comments about the new Green Lantern books. He also has a couple of questions for you both. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
I finally got caught up with your recent episodes. I'm glad you are trying new formats for your show and getting more stuff to talk about. I just wanted to share some quick thoughts on those episodes and give you 2 new questions. First, those interviews were awesome. They made me more excited for the series, and I've liked the issues I have read, but I feel there were some things that kinda irked me. With Adams, having Martin Jordan's funeral be a Jewish occasion feels like Adams read half a sentence and called it a day. Like he heard what he wanted to hear and went with it. Same goes with Phillips, who wants to delve into John's family life but didn't know about his brother or dead sister. Like, seriously, you reference a dead sister but forget her name is Rose? Come on. Also, his complaints about the oath bother me. You don't have to like the classic, but come on, you can do the basic research to find out that there are multiple Green Lantern oaths before judging it like you know everything about the Corps. For the heck of it, I searched it on Google myself and immediately found blogs from DC themselves about the different oaths. Also, Thorne being Phillips' primary source of reference for John is a huge red flag. Nevertheless, these issues have been good, but those points of the interviews on your channel and the Lantern Cast caught my attention. So, with the series itself, I'm liking what Adams is doing, but it feels kinda generic, and I think there are things that keep bugging me. I'm a little tired of Hal going back to Earth, trying to be with Carol for the billionth time and feeling out of touch with the world. It happened to different extents at the beginnings of the Morrison, Jones, and Johns runs, but here it doesn't make much sense since Hal was on Earth during the last series. At a technical level, Adams needs to stop switching between 2 time periods and just stick with a linear storyline, because it's making it hard to follow what is going on. I'm pretty sure the Africa scene from issue 3 happened months before the rest of the issue, but it looks so similar to the rest that it felt like one whole story, which made it confusing. I know it's revealed that Hal created Kilowog as a construct, but it's not worth damaging the series progression. C. With Night Terrors, Adams did the best he could with that storyline. Issue 2 was fantastic, but issue 1, I think it's kinda insulting that one of Hal's nightmare wasn't losing his superhero and Lantern friends. Like, that should be a given and makes it feel like he doesn't care about them. Still good issues, but I wanted to mention that. D. This isn't really a complaint on Adams, but man, I hate that the United Planets are calling the shots. The Guardians were a couple of little snots and are technically gone, though Ganthet was brought back in Dark Crisis and they all appeared in those Night Terrors flashbacks, but what gives the Up the right to lead the Corps? A single Lantern could destroy their entire organization without a sweat. Give the Corps back to John for Ganthet's sake. And speaking of, D, with the John story, I don't want to see John's Dark Crisis world ever again. I know Johnson is focusing on that, but I've never liked the idea that in John's dream world, he would be the savior of the universe. It feels so evil. Who thought that John had an ego and arrogance matching the levels of Lex friggin' Luthor? Wanting to be the guy everybody looks up to and depends on is not John. He just does that naturally as a hero, but wanting to do that feels narcissistic and petty, like he's jealous of Hal being the greatest GL. The first issue of War Journal was also okay. Not my favorite, but I think it's weird that the Up is only now coming to Earth. Hal has been flying around, but you're only gonna get John? Oi. John's family life is well written but not accurate, again his brother and sister Rose. My biggest issue was John's abilities. Like, what the heck is John now? I know you like Thorne, Johnson, but he did a terrible job explaining all of that. Please explain it as soon as you can because it still feels meh. For this email, I did want to share 2 fun questions since it's been so long. First, in honor of Hal's new suit, I wanted to ask, what is your least favorite Hal costume/look? Mine is probably the Black Star suit. I'm not a fan of the Morrison run, and giving Hal a knockoff Darkstar's uniform was lame to me. It's funny, with Hal's new design, I imagine the same look for Hal as his Year 1 costume during the New 52. Second question, if Hal couldn't be the protector of 2814 or be a member of the League, what role would you give him? In this scenario, Hal would still be a Green Lantern, kinda like when John was the leader of the Corps. For me, the solution to having so many human Green Lanterns, outside of killing them off, would be to give them different roles. I would John be the leader, Guy a trainer, Kyle a recruiter, Joe an investigator, and Jess a hunter, but Hal? It's hard to think what he would do outside of just generally protecting the universe. He has had some different roles before, but I don't know what the best one would be. Thanks for a great show as always and for sharing my feedback and questions.
Hey Ken, great to hear from you again. You posted a comment on Facebook that you were disappointed we didn't respond to this in our last episode, but we'd actually recorded the last episode and I was in the process of editing when this particular email came my way. But thanks for reaching out, and I'm glad you appreciated the interviews. I love doing creator interviews. It's always interesting, and there's only so much that creators can say when they're being interviewed, and we try to be very careful. In fact, before we record an interview with a creator, we always say, well, what can't we ask you? And what do you want us to ask you? Is a way to try to help stem some of that. But, the fact that Johnson is referring to the Thorne run, I agree with you there a little bit. I mean, we all know what our thoughts were about the Thorne run. And I don't know. I'm going to give Philip Kennedy Johnson a little bit of a break there, and that he's trying to make sure that we don't throw out something, because some people did enjoy the book, that we don't throw it out, but we continue to build on it, and we pick out the parts we want to build on, and the parts we don't, we kind of try to ignore or minimize.
And then I would agree with when it comes to a creator content. I mean, I'm not trying to be insulting about the whole thing. It wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't like it. It was a year of reading that didn't matter to me at all. But at the same time, somebody else is coming in afterwards, and if I'm a writer, if I'm jumping in after Thorne, I would have to go back and probably reread it myself so I can keep the narrative intact, right?
Yeah,
you keep the ongoing mythos,
Well, and I get his point about Hal being on Earth. They made it a point like Hal had been away from Earth for so long, but the last time we saw Hal, he was on Earth.
Yeah.
He was on Earth for the majority of the Morrison run, and then during the Thorne run, he was on Earth. So I get the criticism. That was one of the few things I have not necessarily lined up with Adams on this new run, is because it's written like, well, Hal's been gone for so long, but he really hasn't. So, I get that point. And as far as switching between the two time periods, I think we've seen the end of that. I think he did that as a mechanism in the beginning to try to say how we got to where we are, but still trying to tell a story that's going forward presently. So I think we're done with that. At least I hope we are. We didn't see any of that in this fourth issue. So we'll see if it continues or not. But I'm sure at some point we're gonna have to get a flashback about what happened on Korrigar. We know that much.
Yeah, I gotta find out. I'm gonna go with Sinestro had a baby. I'm gonna go with Sinestro's baby was kidnapped by Saronic Natu.
And she's jealous because Calissa Drac has taken the place of her real mother. That's the story. We're going with it. Okay.
I like that. I wonder what Ken thinks about that. Ken, tell us what you think about that, man.
And I agree. I don't care about the United Planets. To me, it was an unnecessary plot point. But again, Adams and Johnson are trying to build on it. And this is where they've gone with it. And maybe it's just because they want to keep these characters separate so they can focus on them. I'm going to give them a little bit of slack as they try to maneuver. We know they're talking behind the scenes about something together, a collaboration with the Green Lanterns and where it's going to all go. So I think, it took us a year to get to this point. It's probably going to take us a year to get back to where we want to go.
Hey, I have a theory on who's running the United Planets.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Oh, I'm glad I'm sitting down. Okay, go ahead.
Simon Baz, Kelly Quintella, I think whatever her name is, and Sojourn Truth, right? The one from Far Sector. They're all missing, right? So they're not, and all of a sudden now they're running the United Planets, calling it. Simon Baz is the leader. He's gonna come out as the leader. I can't even say it with a straight face.
But yeah,
man,
it's
I like Ken's write-ins, man. The guy goes in depth. Ken, I wonder where Ken's from. Did he say where he's from?
No, he just not say where he's from.
I want to find out where Ken's from.
I gotta double check too. I don't. Somebody mentioned that his sister was mentioned in the Kyle Rayner era, and I didn't catch it. I know he mentions Rose. I thought Rose was John's sister in another Earth in the multiverse, but maybe 59-year-old brain is not functioning very good tonight, so I'm not 100% sure.
All right, we all have that, man.
So Ken asked us a couple questions. One was, what is our least favorite Hal costume look? And his was the Black Star outfit from the Morrison run.
Oh, I like that. I thought that was cool.
So what's your least favorite?
I don't know if I really have one. I mean, Renegade will always be my favorite, right? I mean, and I like the Parallax version. I think that's cool. Hal's Parallax version. But I don't have one that I dislike really.
I didn't particularly care for the New 52 version where he had kind of like the little things on his shoulders.
Kind of look metalish, like
exactly. I didn't care for that.
I'll jump on that one. That one kind of makes sense. I mean, but they all did that, right? Because Barry had that on the Flash suit.
Yeah, it was a look they were going for during New 52. I mean, there were some things I liked about New 52, and there were some things I really didn't like, and a lot of it was what I didn't like were the costumes. The uniforms were not good for me.
So I think I'd go with that one, Ken. I'll probably jump in on Myron and use his.
So his other question is if Hal couldn't be the protector of 2814 or a member of the Justice League, what role would we give him? Ooh. I don't know.
A shoe salesman? Wait, he's done that. An insurance salesman.
No, he did that. Toy salesman. Oh, wait, he did that one too.
He did that one too. What role will we give Hal? Okay, so I don't want to resort to just moving him to another Lantern Corps.
No.
I can't see him taking on the mantle of another kind of iconic superhero because he wouldn't. I can't see him running really fast. You know what I mean? I can't see him taking.
Do you know what I'd have him do? I would have him be kind of the Han Solo of the DC universe.
I like that idea.
Flying a spaceship, doing what he can do.
Space pirate.
Space rogue. Yeah.
Like Mark Watney, remember Space Pirate?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, for the Martian.
Yeah.
But I could see him being, having a ship, him and the Ghost of Kilowog flying around,
Or
Or Nort.
Sinest-
Nort could be his Chewbacca.
or that's a good call. Tim's going to be digging this. I like it. That would be kind of cool. That would be kind of a fun story. That's kind of what I liked about Renegade. I kind of felt like he was kind of like that rogue Han Solo kind of off the radar character, man.
I still to this day wonder what Robert Venditti would have done had he been able to use the Green Lantern Corps in that story like he wanted to.
Man, that would have been just a totally different Renegade story. That would have been awesome.
So I don't know if we mentioned it. Maybe I shouldn't be mentioning it. But one of the things that when we talked with Robert Venditti, one of the times we were talking off mic, and he was talking about how his original plan for the Renegade or story arc was to be pursued by the Green Lantern Corps. But then DC came to him and said, well, you can't use the Green Lantern Corps because we're going to do those two miniseries, The Lost Army and what the other one was called. And so he couldn't use the Green Lantern Corps. So he had to shift gears completely and change that entire storyline because he couldn't use the Green Lantern Corps. And I've often wondered, boy, I wonder what that was going to be like.
I know, man. I should contact him and see if I get the unedited script version of that.
Yeah, I think he's too much of a gentleman, you know. Like he wouldn't. I don't want to go too inside baseball, but he's said a few things to me that I think he's just too much of a gentleman to air that kind of stuff. He's too much of a professional to talk about it. In fact, I probably shouldn't even have said anything because that was something he said to me off mic. So, but
well, it's one of those things we wish we could have had.
Yeah, just like the Green Lantern Corps storyline.
Oh, yeah.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda. But
right.
All right,
thanks,
well,
Ken. Good to hear from you again, buddy.
Yep, and thanks everybody. You know, we had a truly an intercontinental listener feedback section.
Yeah, that's really cool. How those the listener for Argentina. That's really neat.
Yeah. Well, to me, it speaks to the power of the podcast medium.
Yeah.
You know, both Santiago and Andre, they've been listening to the show audio wise for a long time, and that's one of many reasons why we're not going to abandon the audio format. We've just added the video format to it, just as another way to get to the show. I was posting stuff to YouTube anyway, but it was just audio, and that's not very engaging, and it's not, you know.
Well, I think YouTube, a lot of areas. I don't know how. I wonder how like Spotify works in different regions and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm not sure at certain platforms may not operate on the same level they do here.
That's what I'm thinking. Is there may be people who couldn't find us in the audio format that maybe can find us in YouTube, or maybe there are people who just would prefer to be able to look at us while we're talking. I don't know who those individuals might be. I don't want to look at me when I'm talking. In fact,
I could tell you one place we're not going to go is TikTok. I'm not doing a TikTok.
No, although I've talked about maybe doing some more YouTube content and doing some TikTok with it, just to try to see if it pulls anybody in as an experiment. But
could be an extension of it. Yeah.
I may be too old to use TikTok. I don't know.
I mean, that is what I think kids are using now is TikTok and still Instagram, apparently.
Yeah.
I heard.
Yeah. But all right. Well, thank you, everybody who took the time out of your day to send us a comment or a question. Power Ring, why don't you tell people how they can be a part of the show, and then we'll be back to wrap things up.
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, Myron, episode 232. Man, we're getting up there in the episodes, aren't we?
It's getting there.
I like it. Still talking about good stuff. And I really like the fact that we got a lot of Green Lantern stuff that's coming,
Yeah.
We still got the other Green Lantern book coming out with Alan Scott later on, and hopefully that's going to do well.
Things are on an upswing again, which is very, very it makes me feel good.
It does. I agree.
Yeah.
And thanks for all the listeners. Loved hearing from everybody.
Yes, absolutely. And I love talking about this book. I think it was a great book.
Mm-hmm.
Great issue. And lots of interesting news. We'll see where things go with everything. I'm hoping, with New York Comic Con this weekend, I'm hoping we get some good announcements about more Green Lantern stuff. Maybe are we going to get a third book, or when you and I interviewed Philip Kennedy Johnson, he talked about how this was originally going to be 6 issues, and it looks like it's now going to be an ongoing, but he wasn't sure if he would be able to stick with it past that point. Will we find out more about that kind of thing? Or is he in it for the longer haul than what he originally was going to be in it for? I don't know.
I hope so. It could be a good book. I mean, I'd hate to see him have a story that he wants to tell in 12 and be limited to 6.
Right.
And that's a discredit to him and his writing.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping we get some scoops. We had one good thing happen today with the Elseworlds announcement. I'm hoping we get some more.
Yeah.
Because I'm hungry for more.
Well, we'll be texting each other.
That's right. All right, my friends. Well, we will be back in a couple of weeks to talk about Green Lantern War Journal #2 and maybe some more New York Comic Con news, I hope. Knock on wood. And we'll be getting closer and closer to the end of the year as things go. So we'll see what shakes out as things go on.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's a crazy world out there, my friends. So until next time, take care of yourselves, treat each other well, keep that power ring charged, and make every day your brightest day. Take care. Thanks so much for watching this Green Lantern video from the blog of Oa. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find even more great Green Lantern videos, reviews, podcasts, and more at our main website, www.blogofoa.com. So until next time, keep your power ring charged and make every day your brightest day.